Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so we got to the point where we were talking about how the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human being was with that absolute perfection. In fact, the human being is the best of Allah's creation. And if we really, really believe in that and believe that Allah told us that the human being is the best of Allah's creation, that means that in the creation of the human being is everything that the human being needs in order to develop to their optimal potential and to fulfill their purpose. Everything is there. There's nothing that needs to be changed or added or done or it's you know, like if you look at a lot of the Western childhood psychologists and stuff, you know, often when they're talking about child development, they're talking about things you've got to do to the child or things you've got to make the child do, otherwise they won't develop or they won't reach their optimal potential. But when you come from it from a Quranic perspective, we're coming from the angle that actually Allah's already put everything there. Every single thing that the child needs to reach their full potential is already in place. Okay, they have the inner teacher, which we spoke about in one of the previous sessions. So they have this inner guide or inner teacher, which has been put there by Allah. It's not, you know, it's guiding them so that they can go through all the stages of their development to reach the optimal place. They've got their fitra, and the fitra is, it's the power, it's incredibly powerful. It's the powerful disposition of the human being, which is universal to all human beings, but also each person has a fitra that's a little bit unique to them. And that fitra is with us from the moment we're born until the moment we die. And a human being who's able to live on that according to their fitra and to be connected to their fitra, they will display all of the characteristics, the best possible characteristics that a human being can have. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was the most person who was on his fitra, right? He was the most person who was living the full fitra of the human being. So the child has this fitra, and the fitra is there the whole time, guiding them, and you know, it's within us. It's showing us whether something is right or not right. We know deep down inside, you know. So the fitra is there. So this is another powerful tool that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. And some people, some Montessorians, they will liken the fitra to a Montessori term, which is called the home, right? So Montessori talks about this divine inner force that's guiding the child to learn, a divine inner force that's urging the child to learn. And some people will liken fitra to home, but I think that in her observations, she realized there was something divine within the child, as in a design plan within the child, but she didn't really know exactly what it is. So the more I read about the home and the fitra, I feel like she's observing the fitra, but she doesn't really know what it is, according to our Islamic perspective, our Quranic understanding of what the fitra is. And then also we have the ilham, and ilham can be ilham from ourselves, it can be ilham from angels, it can be ilham from the prophets we'll get from God, and so on. So the human being has all these tools, you know. And one of the things that we see that the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in place for the development of the human being is stage theory. And the human being, out of all the animals and the plants and things that Allah created, the human being has this very intricate, detailed stages that they go through as they grow up and they develop. Okay, if you take something like a cat, you know, they'll be born. It may take some time for them to open their eyes and to learn to crawl, but within 4 weeks, they're already walking and meowing and eating, and you know, they've got some level of independence. But the human being takes years to complete childhood. We take years and years and years to go through that. Okay, if you take something like a plant, you plant the seed, you give it what it needs, and then it will grow up into the plant. It's still got stages, but it's quite simplified. But when you come to the stages of the development of the human being, there's so much detail and perfection there, even in the stages of the development of the physical body within the womb, right? So we all know that if you, in the Quran, Allah talks about how the newborn baby, you know, how it goes through different stages in its development. And first it's like a clot, and then it's like this. And you know, he shows us that even the physical development of the human being goes through stages. And that stage development is also relevant to our spiritual and psychological development of our human character. So this is really important for us, because we need to know that the child, they're not just growing, you know, on this upward plane where they're getting older and they're getting wiser and they're getting, you know, more and more capable. No, there's actually stages within childhood. Okay. Yeah, there's actually stages within childhood, and those stages are stages that where the child will require different things, and we're going to talk about that in a bit more. But in each stage, there's a certain task or a certain job that's taking place. You know, the child needs to go through those stages and complete them so that they can build up themselves to become the human being who they're going to be in the future. If we also look at the life of a human being in general, from the beginning of our existence until, you know, the akhirah, we also have stages as well. So we have like the stage of the alam al-ruh, the soul station, where we were all brought forward to testify in Allah's existence, and that's called our primordial convent. You know, so we all have that. Then we have our period that we were in the womb of our mothers, and then a period in this world, alam ad-dunya, and then in the grave, and then the afterlife. So we even have stages that go beyond this current life that we're in today. It's not just about the stages from childhood to adulthood. It's actually the human being is going through these stages from the moment of their existence. So that's why the stage theory is really important to us as educators. We really have to understand what each stage of human life is for. And if you look at this chart, we know that, you know, the alam al-ruh is the stage where we testified, affirmed our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the creator. We know that the womb stage is the stage in which our physical bodies were being developed. And then the world stage is the stage in which we're living in alam ad-dunya, and we're given now choices and options, right, to see what we're going to do and which way we're going to choose. So we know that each stage is so important, because there's a purpose behind it. Allah didn't create these stages for nothing. He created them with specific intention and the specific things that human beings have to overcome, or things that they have to achieve within those stages. That this concept of stage theory is different from the traditional view of education, because the traditional view of education is very much like, you know, the human being is just like a plant or something that's small, and it just grows and gets bigger on this upwards slope. That's the kind of mainstream thought and the traditional view, educational view of development. Okay. But what we actually see in human development is that every single stage of the human being is distinct and different from the stage before. And what a human being may need in one stage will be very different from what they need in another stage of their life. And it could be whether that's relevant to the worldly life, but it's also relevant to our whole life as a whole, right? So it's more, our development is more similar to a metamorphosis. And what Dr. Montessori observed is that the stages that the child goes through in his development are so different. It's as if almost he's a completely different being in each one of those stages. And she likened it to the metamorphosis of a butterfly. So you have, you have the caterpillar, which has its needs and has its characteristics, right? And has its job that it's doing. And then you have the pupa, which again has its needs and its characteristics. And then we have the butterfly. And if you take, so if we take this organism in any one of these stages, we will see that the needs that it has is different. So what the caterpillar needs to eat is different from what the butterfly needs to eat. If you feed a butterfly the feed for a caterpillar, the butterfly cannot thrive. And likewise, if you feed the caterpillar the butterfly feed, hoping that it's going to speed up its development or it's going to help it to get quicker through the stages, actually the caterpillar itself will not thrive and will not survive. Right? So Dr. Montessori likening the child to this is showing us that in each stage of the child's development, they need what's specific to them in that stage. We shouldn't be giving them something from a stage ahead and putting it in their time now, or holding them back from the stage they're in and giving them something from a stage earlier. Actually, we need to be very well versed and knowledgeable about each stage of development. And then we also need to prepare ourselves so that we can give the child what they need within each stage of development. So that's what Dr. Montessori observed, because remember, she was observing the fitra of the child. So that's why she observed these different stages that the child goes through. But if you go back to the Quran, you go back to the hadith, you'll see that this stage theory has been there from the beginning. We even have the hadith, I think that, let me see if I move forward a little bit. No, it's not here, but we have there's a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad talks about play with your child for 7, and then teach them for 7, and then befriend them for 7, right? Also giving us that stages of life. And in each stage, he's telling us what to do. He's telling us to play with the early childhood level child, right? And then to teach the one who's 7 to 14. So it's not the opposite way. It's not teach the younger child. The earlier you can teach them, the better. No, it's play with the younger one. Teach the older one. You know? So since the theory of human development taking stages is also part of the hadith and part of the Quran, then it's really important that us as Muslim educators, that we have this understanding of what each stage of development is. And Dr. Montessori, she saw that the child was so different from one stage to another that she actually used the word rebirths, saying that it's as if the child is born again each stage, because they're so different from one stage to another. And I think like most of you are parents, right? Yeah, I think, is it all of you? So you've probably gone through different stages with your children, right? You've seen them at different, and if you look back to your child in each one of those stages, you can probably see that there's similar characteristics to what we're going to talk about as we go through the stage theory, right? So what Montessori proposes is 4 stages of child development, okay? She didn't put together adulthood stages, although she did believe that the adult still goes through stages as they're developing and they're growing. But if you look through the seerah and you look through the hadith and the Quran, you'll also see that there are stages that we go through in adulthood. For example, 40, the age of 40, right, is brought up in the seerah and the hadith as the age of wisdom, or the age, you know, where you reach maturity, right? So we know that there is also stages that go beyond childhood. But what we really need to focus on is, you know, as educators, is for the 4 planes of development that are relevant to the stages of the children that we're working on. Dr. Montessori tells us that the successive levels of education must correspond to the successive personalities of the child. So our methods are orientated not to any pre-established principle, but rather to the inherent characteristics of the different ages. So the way that we educate or we bring up a child has to be relevant to the stage that they're in. We have to correspond to the characteristic and the personality and the needs of the child in each one of those stages. So we've already said this, each stage focuses on a particular aspects of development that the human being needs, and that the stages are significantly different. And the stages, they kind of stack upon each other. They rest upon each other. The child has to successively complete one stage before moving on to the other stage. If the child doesn't have that proper support or proper environment to allow them to complete one stage of development, and then they move on to the next stage, what we will see will happen is that the child will be building on a rocky foundation, and then there'll be issues that you have to come back to later on and work on them to bring the child back, right? So it's kind of like the building up of man, the building block, and that foundation has to be really strong. Each stage has to be given its haq. Each stage has to be given its right. We have to understand the stage as mothers, as educators, and we have to give the child their haq and their right within that stage according to their fitrah. Not according to what psychologists believe or according to what, Montessori theory or this theory or that theory. No, it's according to what the fitrah of the child is in that stage. So what we're trying to do when we use this stage theory to support our development is we're trying to flow with the fitrah of the child. That fitrah that Allah has installed in the child that is going to allow them to develop themselves to become a fully functioning human being and to fulfill their purpose of life. We want to flow with that river of the fitrah. We don't want to be coming to the child, giving them some idea that we have, which is not in sync with their fitrah. Because when you flow with the fitrah of the child, then development is optimized, and the child will be happy, they will be peaceful. All of the beautiful characteristics of their fitrah will surface. But if you come in there and you go against the current of the fitrah, that's when we begin to see difficulties arise in the child. We begin to see the child, maybe they'll throw tantrums, maybe they get angry, maybe they'll be bored, maybe they find it difficult to learn things, or maybe they find it, difficult to interact with people. We find all of these difficulties begin to come up. So it's really, really important for us that we flow with the fitrah. And we can only flow with the fitrah if we understand what the fitrah of the child is. If you observe anything that you see around you in the nature of the world, you will see that perfection in development is always attained when we don't interfere with the fitrah. Anything. If you take, for example, that same butterfly and you allow it to develop according to its fitrah, inshallah, it will emerge as this beautiful butterfly. But if you take that butterfly when it's in the pupa and you think, well, let me help it to open it up earlier, or let me, just cut a little snippet so it can help itself out. Or maybe you see it struggling to come out itself and you decide to help it. What happens is you actually ruin the wings of the butterfly. The butterfly has to go through that struggle to come out from the pupa. It has to go through those stages. So if we interfere with the fitrah, then we're not helping, we're not aiding. One thing that I tell my teachers is that if you're interfering with the fitrah of the child, it means you're trusting yourself above the fitrah that Allah has put there for the child. And who are we? And what knowledge do we have to put our knowledge and our understanding of the child above the fitrah that Allah has put in place? So one is we're trusting ourselves more than we're trusting how Allah designed the child. And two, we are trying to speed things up to happen before the time that they should. Or in some cases, we're delaying things from happening instead of happening in the time it should happen. So when we interfere in that way, we're kind of like, putting ourselves as higher than the fitrah of the child. And this is what we're seeing in so much schools and education systems that we see all around the world. We're seeing that they're not using the fitrah of the child as the basis of education or the basis of supporting development, but they're coming up with their own ideas and their own theories. And you can definitely come up with theories and ideas, but use the fitrah as the basis. So your theory or your idea or your method that you're going to use has to be in sync with the fitra. The fitra has to be the basis of the work that we do. It cannot be that we are coming with something and not looking at the fitra. We have to see what Allah has already put in place there. Because as Muslims, our first trust has to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to recognize what He's put there for the child, and we have to work with it. And we see in every single thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. You know, the human being is just one example, but if you look at the stars, if you look at the moon, if you look at the solar systems, every single thing that we see around us, there's no imperfection. Allah created every single thing perfectly, without flaws, to the millimeter, to the second, the exact size, the exact distance, the exact balance of gases and everything. That's the perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. And if that's the case, then who are we to think of the child as not so perfect? Who are we to think of the human being is not designed with that much perfection? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create the universe without any flaws, then He's also created the human being without any flaws as well. The child is created without those flaws. If you look at a child and you see flaws, it's not from the fitra of the child. It's because of things that have happened in the child's life, whether it's in the family or the society or anything, that has prevented the child from flowing with their fitra. That has become an obstacle to stop them from developing according to their fitra. That's why you see flaws, or that's why you see what Montessori calls deviations from nature. That's why we see that. But actually, the normal fitra state of the child, there's no flaws. And it's the same to us as a human being, because we are still human beings and we are still created with that perfection. And even within us as an individual, yes, we all have many flaws, but within us, we still have that ability and that fitra to guide us towards the best that we can be. It's still there. And what we see happen over the years is the child becomes less and less and less in touch with their fitra, because we are constantly, you know, the river is flowing, but we're constantly putting obstacles, and we're constantly grabbing the child's attention and turning them away from what their fitra is calling them to, turning them away to here, turning them away to this, to do more maths, to do more language, to get a better grade, to do this, or to learn these sports, because you've got to be doing all these things. And we're putting the child left, right, and center, whether it's the parent or the school or the society, causing all these obstacles. So as the child gets older, they become less and less and less and less connected to their fitra. Their flow becomes disrupted, and instead of flowing with their fitra, now the child, as they get older, they begin to flow, you know, they don't know where they're flowing actually, you know, and it just, you know, yes, they'll develop, and yes, they can still excel in some things, but it's not to the full development of a perfect human being. So a lot of this comes back to our trust. It comes back to our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He created the human being perfectly. That child that's in front of you when you step into the classroom, or that child that's in front of you at home today, however old they are, Allah created them with a perfect fitra that has no flaws. And they just need the right environment and the right chance to develop to the best of their capability. So this is really, really important as Muslim educators for us to understand. So we have an activity here which says, what does a child need to develop in order to grow into a fully functioning human being who can fulfill his purpose of life? This is from, because this is on the slides before. Do you want to do this activity, or should I go on? Does anyone want to share? What do you think a child needs so they can let me change that question. What does a child need so that they can flow in sync with their fitra? What do they need, and what are we doing that's maybe becoming an obstacle to their fitra? But we can just have a quick discussion together without without anyone go first. Jean, you want to go first? what does a child need to flow with their fitra, and perhaps what do you think we've been doing or is happening in environments in the society or school or anything where the child is being prevented from that?
So I would say the first thing they need is to feel safe, because nobody can flourish if they don't feel safe in their home environment, but also, you know, wherever they're attending school, kindergarten, wherever it is. I think, you know, like you said, the thing is about, particularly with standardized testing. So, you know, by the time your child is this age, you should expect them to do this. And if you don't, then what's wrong with them? And how can we fix it? You know, instead of waiting for it to happen naturally, we push, you know, why are they not walking? Why are they not making sentences? You know, whatever, why are they not toilet trained? Whatever it is, you know, that we, you know, somewhere somebody's put an arbitrary date on when these things should be achieved. And if they're achieved early, yeah, alhamdulillah, we're happy with that. But if they're not, then we start to worry, we start to question ourselves, you know, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with me as a parent, what's wrong with the school that my child is not, you know, doing what I see. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, and if you look in the history of education, you'll see that those ages have become younger and younger, right? So there was a period of time where it wasn't, where children were not expected to read until after the age of 7. And then it became earlier, and then it became earlier and earlier. And in the UK right now, they're expecting children who are reception, who are 4 and 5, to be able to read. So if you look at the history of education, you'll see that these milestones have been brought to younger and younger, and it's almost like they're forcing the child to speed up their development. And of course, that's going to be a huge obstacle. Like we said, if you tear the butterfly's pupa too early, you damage the butterfly. And it's the same thing if you push the child to read too early, or to do this or to do that too early, to walk too early, you damage them, right? So that was lovely.
Yeah, I think it's huge here. You know, like there's so many people advertising these preschool programs so that by the time your child starts school, they can write, they can read, you know, all of these things that they need before they go to school. And my thought was, that's what you do when you get to school.
Yes, exactly. And I know many people, like, for example, reading. I know people who read later than the age of 9, 10, and those people have gone on to do extremely well, get masters, PhDs, even become lecturers, and they didn't read until the age of 9, 10. And it just makes you think, these children, these poor children who are going through that right now, maybe their time is not yet, but we push them. And because we're pushing them away from their fitra, and this can have such a damaging effect on the child. Okay, who would like to go next? And I'll just break my fast while you go. Hannah, do you want to go next since you're unmuted?
Sure, mashallah, you're fasting. Definitely a healthy environment and support. So of course, love and encouragement. So that's kind of all connected. So yeah, definitely the healthy environment part is what Montessori is all about, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. Lovely.
So I also wanted to ask you, when you were speaking what goes against the fitra.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was what Jean was saying as well. So basically forcing them, that's the most damaging, yeah? That's what I wanted to ask you, like some examples of actually going against the fitra.
Yeah, so like forcing would be going against the fitra. Another thing is introducing things too early. Like, for example, I don't need to say the word, but I'm sure everyone will know what I'm talking about. You know, certain things that are being introduced in society in the West nowadays to children at a very young age. You know, if it was being introduced to, let's say, a child who's older and capable to handle it, it's not going to damage them. But when you introduce these ideas and you plant those seeds when they're young, then it damages the fitra of the child, right? It affects the fitra of the child. So introducing things too early as well. So one is like academics, where you push them to do something early, but it could also be introducing ideas or exposing them to things too early. And another one that I find, like, sometimes it happens amongst Muslim families, is they try to protect their child so much that they actually delay them from experiencing things that they need to experience in particular stages of their life. And that can also be damaging, right? Because we have to, it's not about how we believe it should be, but it's about what the knowledge is telling us from the Quran and the Hadith about what's needed in each stage. So really just, you know, that is more towards timing, making sure the child has things in the right time. And if it's too early or too late, that can damage the fitra, it can affect the fitra. Rania, do you want to go next?
Pretty much like everyone was saying, love and safe environment. I don't want to repeat what Jean and Hannah said. It's pretty much the same.
Is there anything that you can think of that is kind of like, again, goes against the fitra? Anything else?
It's I think it's if the parents like worry a lot, as you said, yeah, they can cause damage to the kids by not letting them experience, yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, it's probably some parents are worried too much.
Yeah,
They are protecting their kids, and yeah, this can be
it can also have its effects, right?
yeah, has bad effect. Yeah.
Okay, Fida, anything you want to add on that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, just gonna be repeating what they said. I think not allowing the child to just, you know, be a child to discover on their own, to make mistakes, to we're sort of like guiding the children to what we want them to be and not letting them flourish to be who they are.
Yeah. And I think that also like touches on the fact that we said that every human being has a fitra, so it's universal to every human being, but it's also specific. You know, Allah fashioned each one of us a bit differently from the other. You know, maybe our personality is a bit different, or the way we work is different, or the way we talk is different, right? So the fitra of the child is specific to them, and we have to give them that opportunity in that place to, you know, flow with their unique fitra to become who they're supposed to be. And
yes, and so yeah, we just need to support them and sort of encourage, like, not support them by teaching them, not expecting them to do things a certain way.
Yes. And I think like the realization for us as adults is that Allah already knows who that child is supposed to be in the future. Allah it's already within his knowledge. But we don't know that. So he's given them a fitra to lead them to that place that he wants to take them to. So we have to be humble and ready to allow the child to take their course to become who Allah wants them. You know, I think it also touches on the idea of remembering that we are guardians for the child. We don't own the child. We don't.
We can provide guidance, but then we have to trust in Allah, and that, you know, Allah will take them whichever way they're supposed to go, and we just have to trust in Allah's, you know, plan.
Yes, inshallah. Yes. Okay. And then Tenny, did you have anything you want to add on that?
It's also a child to teach. Can you guys hear me? Because I got a new headset in. I'm not sure if the mic works well. You good? Yeah? All right.
Yeah, I can just about hear you.
Is that any better?
I think go ahead. Go ahead.
That's all right. I'll just use the phone. Oh, give me a sec. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, you want to go ahead?
Give me a minute.
Do you want to go ahead?
Okay. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. Yeah, so I just think if you force a child to teach, you're taking away their love for learning. So in my point of view, that's what's most important, that the kid is, the child is loving what they're doing. So if you force them to do something, it's just becomes like a chore to them, and they're no longer interested in wanting to learn. So once you kill that instinct in the child at a young age, then to reverse that is probably going to be very difficult, because you've taken away that they want to learn, or they're striving to understand, and they're curious, or they're questioning, and that's how they learn, by by observing them by themselves. But if you're just trying to like cram everything into them and get them to sit down and do it this way, and not let them naturally form their own way of learnings, and trying to understand, the way the child learns, then you're actually doing a lot of damage to them. So I guess that conforms in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us wanting to learn, and then us taking that away from the child because of our anxieties and social pressures and all that and whatnot.
Yeah, that's lovely. And sometimes also just forgetting that life is learning as well. So even if the child is not in a classroom, not with a book, or not having a lesson, they're also learning. That's also learning. So sometimes we forget
Exactly.
as well, and then we don't appreciate those moments of learning that occur throughout the day, right? And sometimes we don't allow the child to focus at that point in time when they're, when they've made the mistake and they're learning a lesson or something. We don't let them focus that because we don't value that.
That's it.
This also affects the child. And I think that if we want to think about what influences the child's journey on the fitra heavily, I would say the environment that the child is in is going to have such a huge impact on whether the child is going to flow with their fitra or not. Because the fitra is there and it's urging the child and it's pushing the child, but the child has to do the work that their fitra is urging them to do. So they need that rich environment, the environment that is prepared with whatever they need so they can complete those tasks that are to do with their fitra is urging them to do for their development. So the environment is important, and the environment is not just the physical environment. So one is the physical environment. It could be the home environment. It could be the school environment. It could be, outside of the home. But another one is also the spiritual environment. And that spiritual environment is what includes us human beings as well. The adults that are around the child, the family that's around the child, all of these people that are around the child. This spiritual and physical environment are either going to be aiding the child on their fitra and supporting them, or they become an obstacle on the child's fitra. So either it's going to help the child or become an obstacle. And like a lot of the things that you said, like curriculums and lessons and this and that, they all kind of come under this idea of environment. What's the environment that surrounds the child? And if we look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created every single plant and animal, you'll see that He nurtures them in their perfect environment. They've got the food that's perfect for them. They've got the environment that's perfect for them. He's taught even the birds, like if you see the birds, I always watch, we've got lots of birds here. So I always watch them, and they fly and they find the little leaves and the little twigs and things to build their nests, and they make the most perfect nests for their little ones. And I always look at them and think, who taught the bird to do that? Who taught the bird to create this most perfect environment for its young? If you just look at nature, you'll see that Allah's arranged it so that everything has this perfect environment for its optimal development. And the environment unique to a bird, it's not suitable for a cat, for example, to develop in, or suitable for a plant to develop in. It's relevant to the bird itself. And just as I said, cat, she thought she'll come and join, just to give you a, if you give me 1 second, I'll just put on the light so that I can see better. Okay, that's a bit better. Yeah. So environment is so important for supporting the future of the community. Really, really, really crucial. We need to always keep that in our mind as we're working with each other. So if we're talking about flowing with the fitra, it means we need to know what each one of these stages is all about. We need to know what the child requires, what their fitra needs, what kind of environment, what kind of experiences do they need, so that they can flow with their fitra and they can complete everything that's needed in each stage before they get to the next stage. So I think we've got time, right? Because we started late. Let me just check there. Yeah, we've got time, right? We can go on a bit longer. I know some of you came on the dot, but is it okay if we continue on this? Yeah, okay. So this chart that you have in front of you, this is Dr. Montessori's chart based on her observations of the child. And she spoke about 4 planes of development in childhood. And she used this chart to express those 4 stages. So she used triangles. And if you have a look, you'll see that there's, actually, I won't say what there is. You just unmute yourself and just say anything that you've noticed about the chart, and then I'll tell you what it represents. It'll be more fun that way. So just anything that you've noticed on the chart, any observation you have about the chart, and I'll tell you what it stands for or what it represents and why Montessori put it like that. Anyone? Rania, anything about the chart?
The child, like he's at this stage he'll be like willing to learn everything about
Which stage are you referring to?
first stage.
The first stage, yeah. So the first stage, what color is it, Renia? It's
Red.
red. And Montessori put it as red because she wants to emphasize that this is a really hot, important stage of the human being's life. In fact, she even put the fire at 0. Right?
Yep.
So the fire is showing that at the moment of birth, there's this huge creative development that's taking place in the child. It's a really, really important period of the child's life. And she used the color red. Okay. And then we have a second red stage, which is adolescence, which is 12 to 18 years. So adolescence is, again, a second period of the child's life where the child is transitioning from child to adult. And so this is also another really, really creative period. It's a very, very important period. And that's why it's in red. The other 2 stages, the blue ones, they're blue because they're calmer periods. They're cool, calmer stages of the human development. If the child successfully completes what's needed in the stage before, then this stage will be calm. So in the childhood, 6 to 12, if the child completed everything that they need to in infancy, then childhood from 6 to 12 is actually going to be a really calm and tranquil period. Does anybody have children in this stage or had children in this stage? 6 to 12 years?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I have.
yeah, how do you feel that it's a calm period?
My child never calm.
Rania, you're funny.
Are they their own kind of calm? Is it calmer at all? It, you know?
Come to think of it, it is a calm period because I've got currently a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And but my 6-year-old has always been a calm child.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
Yeah.
So when I compare, my 3-year-old, she's chaotic.
Yeah, so if that child from 0 to 6 goes through that stage and completes everything that's needed according to their fitra, how their fitra is flowing, then 6 to 12 will be quite a calm period. And that's why we can teach them. We can teach them because they're calm and they're settled, you know? Whereas 0 to 6, there's so much going on. The child is learning to walk, they're learning to talk, they're learning to, there's so much new things going on. So the child is going through all this creative development, and it's not, we can't really sit them down and teach them. Has anyone got a child who's adolescence between 12 to 18 years?
Yeah, the 13-year-old.
Yeah. So did you is this is red because this is another period of great turmoil.
Yep.
Another
Definitely.
very challenging period. And I'll tell you something, I only have one actual biological child, but I have many children that live in our madrasa here, but I have one biological child. And you know, alhamdulillah, I was already a Montessori teacher before I had him. And most of the time it was pretty easy because I knew what I was doing. When he was 0 to 6, I knew what I was doing with him. I knew what he needed, what he didn't need. 6 to 12, I knew what I was doing, what he needed, he didn't need. He is also autistic, so we had like challenges with his autism, but it was still pretty smooth. But when it came to adolescence, I felt like I knew nothing. I felt like, oh my God, I'm completely unprepared. I almost lost the plot completely. So this is another huge, important, red hot stage of the child's life. And then if they've gone through their adolescent stage well, and they get to the age of 18, then you start to see another calm, cool, and tranquil period. Does anyone have a child who's older than 18?
Yeah, me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. My son is 19 now. So after when he got to about 17, 18, he started to calm down. And then at 19, it's just like, whoa, this is fun. This is enjoyable. All that worry that we had to go through with the younger, when they were in adolescence. And it's just like, alhamdulillah, back to normal. You have your child back. A lot of people say that when their child passes 18, they feel like they've got their child back. Whereas in that whole adolescent stage, they're going through so many changes, you kind of like lose touch with who's my child. Do you see?
Yes.
So that's why Dr. Montessori used that color coding. How about the shape? What do you notice about the shape that she's used?
The first one is, it's like 2 stages from
Yeah.
0 to 3, and then 3 to 6.
Yeah. So
3 to 6.
yeah. So she's used triangles because the incline and the decline of the triangle represents the child kind of reaching the peak of that stage, which is usually around the middle. So the incline is imagine you are walking up a mountain. Imagine these triangles were the other way and you are walking up a mountain, and how difficult it is to climb up that mountain to get to the top. That period of climbing up the mountain, that's when the child is constructing. They're developing all these new characteristics. So the child from 0 to 3, they're learning how to move. They're learning how to walk. They're learning how to talk. They're learning how to socialize. They're learning how to do everything new. It's a struggle. And when they get to about 3, they've kind of mastered those things to a basic level. So from 3 to 6, now they're going down the mountain. So down the mountain is a lot easier. And what Montessori says about this period when they're going down, the decline of the slope, is that this is a period of crystallization, which means that whatever the child has already learned, now they're going to crystallize it. So the child from 0 to 3 has already learned vocabulary. They've already learned how to talk. Now, from 3 to 6, they're crystallizing their language, which means that they're expanding their vocabulary. They're improving their grammar. They're improving their sentence structure. They're making all of those improvements to crystallize their language. The same goes for walking. The child from 0 to 3, they learn how to walk. And most 3-year-olds can walk, but they're still a little bit clumsy and they're still a little bit wobbly with some things. But from 3 to 6, the child now really refines their gross motor skills so that they can manipulate themselves beautifully on their 2 legs. So that's what we see, is the triangle is showing us the development of new skills and knowledge, and then the crystallization of those new skills and knowledge. And for infancy, from 0 to 6, it's in 2 stages because so much is going on. And the same for adolescence, is divided into 2 stages. Whereas 6 to 12 and 18 to 24, those calm periods, it's quite a calm development. It's not really so obvious where the child is at in those. Yeah. So anything else anyone noticed that they want to share or they want to ask?
I remember in these in the week 4 assignment, because I was going through like a recap of the weeks last night. I don't know what we did in week 4, but I did have some notes from the sensitive periods, the Montessori philosophy, and you gave us, I think, a video or a read, and it does say about these peaks in the 3rd year and how order is important. Yeah. And that's the vital essential factor for the young child, and how it's constructing itself. So that was super interesting, because it's like a mental construction. Yeah.
And if we think about it, the child, it's like all of these stages, the child is constructing themselves, they're constructing who they're supposed to be. And if we really dive into each stage, what we will see is how Allah layers the human being from one stage to another stage. Out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He doesn't ask from us anything that's beyond the stage that we're in. So we're not accountable until after the age of maturity, right? We're not accountable before. He doesn't ask us to be accountable because we haven't been built up to that level yet. Everything that Allah asks from us is according to where we're at. So in this layering of the human being, and we'll talk about that more as we go along, in this layering of the human being, we'll see that we are being built up stage by stage and prepared stage by stage to be able to become the best human being we are. And Allah He only asks from us and holds us accountable for whatever we are ready for. And I think that's really, really beautiful when you think of it in that way. That he's designed us with these stages, and He knows when is the right stage. And how many of us hold young children accountable, and we come down on them like a ton of bricks when they make an error, right? So many of us, we will instinctively do it because that's what the environment and society or our own experiences that we've had. But Allah doesn't hold that child accountable, and not in that way. So who are we to come down on them like that, in that way as well? You know? So that's why when you know about these stages of development, you can also know what to expect from the child and what to not expect. And then that can also help you to have patience and have more love and have more understanding and support, so the child can complete each stage as he goes along. Okay, so we said about the fire, we said about the triangles. I think we can move on. So I have the hadith here actually of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, play with your child for 7, then discipline him, or in some other translations it says teach him for 7, then be his friend for 7, and then give him free reign, right? So if we go back to here, this is in 6s, right? 6, 12, 18, and the Prophet's one is in 7s. So it's not too far off. But actually, if you also consider in some countries, the way that they calculate the age is different from the Georgian method. So let's say in an Arab country, often they calculate your 1 at birth in some of the countries. In Malaysia, for example, as soon as it turns the 1st of January, everybody's 1 year older. It doesn't matter when you were born. So everybody's a year older. And also, if you think about calculations with the lunar calendar and everything, you'll see that actually, you know, these ages that Maria Montessori observed are pretty close matching to what's in the hadith. And in fact, there is one of Dr. Montessori's early publication where she actually said 7 instead of 6. So 0 to 7 instead of 6. So that's really interesting for us to see that what was given to us through the Prophet is actually matching pretty much what Montessori did with her observations of the child. Okay. And throughout all of these stages, what I want you to remember is the child is constructing themselves. They're building up the human being that they're going to be in the future. Okay. The child is the one who's doing the work. It's not us who's doing it. We can't make the child construct themselves. We can't make the child be anything. Okay. The child is the one who's constructing their human faculties. And because he's constructing them, he's the one who's doing the work. And he's doing it based on his fitrah, based on the blueprint that Allah gave him, based on the absorbent mind, the sensitive periods, the stage of development. That's how he's constructing himself. So when you see the young child in each one of these stages, you have to think of him as the self-constructor, the child whose task and job right now during this stage is to build themselves into an adult human being who is fully functioning, who can also fulfill their purpose of life. Okay, so the next part, we're going to go into the stages in more detail, but it's going to take long. So it is almost, I have to also pray Maghrib. So maybe we can just take a question or two and then we'll end it here. Oops. Is that okay? Does anyone have a question? Anybody? Question or observation or something you want to share? No? Rania, anything? No?
No, good.
Okay, Hannah? Nothing? Fida? Tenny? Alia? Is Jean still here? Oh, yes. Anything? No? Okay.
My question, if I can just ask how everyone's going with the assignments, because I haven't uploaded anything, but I've been kind of slowly gathering things and getting there. So I just so I'm motivated. Has anyone like uploaded their assignments? Because we're already, this is week 5, is it? Has anyone taken notes?
Last time when we had class and it was just Jean, Rania, and I, we discussed that we didn't have to do assignments. Did you watch the live? So we discussed that we would watch videos, read content, and come to the lives, but the assignments, it was just if you wanted the certificate, I believe.
Yeah, from what we understand, what we're going to do is, so we've had a lecture today. We've spoken about pain development.
Yeah.
And I will share some further reading to do and maybe a video or two for you to look at during the week. And also, what I was saying is that it'd be really good if you can come together as a team to do a discussion. Instead of an assignment, you can do a discussion about, you know, something that we brought up, or it could be like a group activity that you can do together. So you can do that at another point of the week, or if you were meeting each other up, you could do that and that. And the people like Rania has submitted quite a lot of assignments. So the people who do want to continue submitting the assignments, then please go ahead. And I'm more than happy for you to do that. But if you're not able to, then at least join the lives, preferably on time if it's possible. And the second thing is I will send out further reading and videos that you can watch. I'll send it on the WhatsApp group, so it's just easier for everybody. Is that okay? Jean, is that what we agreed, or is there anything else to add?
No, I think that's perfect.
Yeah, it would be great for us to meet, and I can see how Jean and Rania have amazingly implemented the lots of things from whatever video of the practical life or the activities that are mentioned in some of the weeks. They've implemented it already in the classes. Yeah,
that's lovely. I'd love to see photos of that or hear about that. Sorry, I'm a British short hair breeder, so I literally got like kittens all over my desk because they want to eat as well, and they're like literally attacking my laptop. So I'm so sorry. If anybody wants a British short hair, you know, and you want to come to Malaysia, let me know.
Oh, I want to do both.
You do? You're welcome. Come to Malaysia.
Yes, let's go, Jean.
Yeah.
Lovely. I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
Inshallah,
Let me know when, yeah?
Oh,
Inshallah.
I'd love to. I snuck off just 5 minutes ago to put my cat to bed.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, my brother said to me the other day, he goes, you just do all your life is work, work, work. And he said to me, he said, what do you do that you really love just for yourself? And I was like, well, I love my work. And he goes, no, other than work, what do you do? What's that dream that you always had since you were a child? And I said to him, cats. And he goes, just do it. And so my husband and son started me off by getting me my breeding cats. And so I've been breeding British short hairs. So it's
mashallah.
perfect. You know, I'm Gina, you're a cat lover, it seems. So I think you understand that they just give us so much energy to do more work, right? The cats, they
No,
just
I'm always saying how useless my cat is. All she does is sleep. But I do love her, but all she does is sleep and eat and, you know, get feisty at us. But yeah, I do like her.
mashallah. Okay. So anything else? Okay.
I'm good.
I better run to pray. I will share some links from the group, and inshallah we'll see you next week, inshallah.
Inshallah.
I'm going to stop the
Inshallah.
recording now.